I'm Keith Bynum.
And I'm Evan Thomas.
And we're from Bargain Block. On Bargain Block, we're known for doing budget-friendly renovations that really pack a design punch.
The part we enjoy most is creating fully furnished and personally styled homes for new homeowners.
So while it's the larger projects that get most of the attention and the money, it's really the furniture, lighting, and decor which turn an empty room into a home. We love to thrift, pick, and DIY to accomplish these affordable looks and give items a new life.
So we're going to show you a few projects you can do at home to create unique pieces with treasures you may find. We're taking this blank space and turning it into a contemporary living room inspired by Bargain Block. Lighting is a key component to creating a warm and inviting space. Lamps are really fun. We find them just about everywhere, thrift stores, online. I find them on the side of the road a lot in Detroit. So for this project, we're doing one of my favorite things to lamps, which is a cement dip. It's usually very easy, it's affordable, and it really has a high impact. It really can transform a lamp from blah to fabulous and modern.
So if you find a lamp in a thrift store, usually the electrical is okay, but you definitely always want to check that. This lamp is in perfectly good condition. There's nothing wrong with it. The pattern is not exactly what we want for the space, so we're just going to alter it so it has a more modern look. To start off, we're going to remove the shade, and then we're going to tape off all of the electrical so that it doesn't get paint on it. We're gonna paint the surface with a spray paint primer. So we're gonna put our masks on.
Yeah, thank you.
So that we don't breathe it in. And then put on some gloves. Spray painting, you wanna make sure that you're not putting on too much so that it doesn't drip. Just a light coat.
Porcelain is extremely smooth, so any liquid on it is gonna run really fast.
Which is also why we're priming it, so that we have a nice matte surface for when we put the top coat on and for when we put the cement on.
A lot of times when you come across a lamp in a thrift store, obviously they're not the prettiest, they wouldn't be there if they were, but they're really easy to modify and kind of make your own and really can create a fun kind of wow factor in a space.
You oftentimes find lamps that have maybe a great shade but a bad base, or maybe a great base and a not so great shade, and all those are easy to fix to make it fit your own space.
We let it dry for about an hour. For this particular space, we're doing a lot of creams and mochas, cappuccino colors. So for this particular lamp, we're going with a nutmeg.
We're gonna paint the surface with some spray paint.
Even on the second coat of this,
Keep it light.
as light as possible because it can still run so easily.
Yeah. And you see how he's kind of far away from it? That'll help you keep it light, because as soon as you go in close, it's gonna get real thick and you'll get runs.
We're gonna paint the shade to match. I love monotones, so using the same spray paint will kind of keep the design cohesive.
This is fabric, so you don't have to really prime it. You can just do a quick spray paint on it.
The main thing about painting fabric is to paint it at least 2 times. You'll notice kind of variations in the way the paint hits. If you do it a second time, you can kind of hit those spots.
You want to have a very consistent coat of paint, and the way you do that is by just doing multiple coats. So we're gonna let this dry for a couple minutes, and then we'll do a second coat.
So when I'm looking for lamps, I love anything that has a nice shape. Spheres are awesome, triangles, anything that's kind of blockish. You're looking for something with a modern shape that you can modify and make it look like it's today. So we painted the second coat on the lampshade. It's nice and consistent with the paint. So we're gonna mix up some concrete and we'll do a nice
Cement.
technically, but yeah. We're gonna mix up some cement, according to Mr. Construction Man, and do a nice dip. The goal with the dip is to create a nice angular dip on the lamp to kind of mimic like a triangle and just give that nice like angular line. If you have a giant room, you can get by with some really chunky stuff. If you have a smaller space, smaller lamps and smaller lampshades can really make the space feel a lot larger than it actually is. Depending on your space, try to think about what the scale and proportion look like, and that will help you when you're looking for a lamp.
So the first step is we have to mix the concrete.
You said concrete.
Oh, sorry, cement. We have a plastic container that is big enough for us to dip the whole lamp in. So before we mix, we're gonna mask back up. So the way I like to do it is I like to put the powder in and then slowly add water. There is the ratio on the bag, so I would start with that. This is a paddle mixer with a cordless drill. If you don't have a drill, you can just use a 5-gallon paint stirrer. This is about the right texture Still some lumps in it, so you want to get as much of those out as possible.
So it's pretty liquidy, that's a good thing. I always like to touch it just to see if it coats your fingers nice. That's exactly the consistency you want.
So we're gonna make a little place out of newspaper where this lamp can land as soon as we dip it. So at this point, I'll let Keith do the dipping since he's the artiste.
I wanna make sure two things is I don't get any of the electrical components in the concrete, obviously. It's a nice place to hold it as well for the dip, but you're gonna go in at a nice, about, I don't know, 30 degree,
20, maybe.
20 degree angle. And just super easy, light in, push, kind of lean it up to whatever you want. For the dip, we'll pull it out. You're gonna let the excess run off. What we're really hoping for is kind of that sharp line. The good thing is if you mess it up, you can dip it again, create a new line. So don't worry too much if you don't get the dip right the very first time.
So this cement, it'll take about 10 to 20 minutes before it starts to harden. Move it a couple times as it's drying to make sure that it doesn't solidify itself to the paper. And you'll notice that the sheen goes away and the color should change to a slightly lighter gray. And I will say you should probably use a container that you don't really care about because
It's gonna be trash.
you can get the cement out of a plastic container, but make sure you choose a container that you don't really care about in case you get some excess that is hard to come off. I would let this harden for a couple hours, and then at that point, it should be ready to assemble.
So we've got our lamps done. It's really fun to bring in textural elements as many places as you can. And these lamps are a really great example of that. This is a really simple technique, I feel like, that brings in our color palette and some texture.
Cement might seem a little intimidating, but it's actually pretty easy, and it adds a really great texture for this design.